One thing that I've observed in the US, and I've been living here for the past 7-8 years, so one thing that I observed is that there is an epidemic of loneliness in this country. It's almost like when you go outside, people are scared of each other. Everyone is scared, everyone is anxious, everyone is stressed. People will act like they're busy. And like, for example, if you go to the gym, you will see everyone on their phones. You won't really see a lot of people talking to each other. And so in all aspects of society, if you're going to restaurants, to gym, to the library, or to any other public place, people are scared of interacting with each other. This is a symptom of some general sickness, you can say, that has inflicted this country, and the Western world in particular, I think. So, what is to be done with this state of affairs, right? So the other day I went to a coffee shop, and it was nice and it was snowing outside, so I just sat there. I ordered the coffee, and people were all chatting with each other, like the people in the groups. They were chatting with each other, but outside of the groups, nobody else was talking to anybody else. Right? The coffee shop is supposedly a public place where you're supposed to go and maybe even meet people. But people were only talking in the small groups, and then outside of that, nobody was talking to each other. And so I thought about that. I was like, maybe I should go talk to some people, make some friends. But then instantly in your head, you get second thoughts. You're like, well, what if I go to them and then they don't want to be my friend? What if they don't want to be bothered? What if they'd rather not be bothered? What if I make a fool of myself and then there's other people there too that are watching too? So like, that kind of makes approaching people hard. And so all this anxiety and fear and stress resulted in me not talking to anyone. So I just sat there in a corner, all by myself. And it was cold as hell too, it was snowing outside. I had a book that I was reading. I ordered some caffeinated drink. And eventually, like towards the end of the day, a lot of people had left, and then you still see like a bunch of people just sitting all by themselves. It got very quiet, the lights were dim, and so even then, the question is, how do you approach people? Can you approach them? Are you supposed to approach them? What if they don't want to be approached? But then how else do you make friends? So this is a general neurosis, you can say, that is running its course in this country. People are in general anxious and stressed, but also lonely. Like a lot of people are lonely. They only have like a few friends, and that's it. And the rest of their time they just spend doing whatever. One of the reasons, I think, that causes this loneliness is the fact that people in general live relatively meaningless lives. I mean, if you think about it, people in this country, in the US, they live relatively meaningless lives. They go to work 9 to 5, which 99% of the time is meaningless. They're just there to do work for somebody else, just so they can get some money, right? So they're there to sell their time for money. That's it. And after they come back home at 5 p.m. or at 6 p.m., depending on the traffic, they don't have much time left to live. And so they try to squeeze whatever little time that they have left to live right? They will try to squeeze all sorts of activities into that time, which results in just a complete mess. I mean, I remember when I first came to the US, I used to live with a host family, a relatively young one. They were like in their 30s, early 30s. And so when they would come back from work after 5 p.m., you would see that it's almost like they're afraid of not living, if that makes sense. So what they would do is they would immediately go out to eat dinner, maybe go out to get some drinks, or go out bowling, going out to play pool. Relatively meaningless activities, if you think about it. Like at the time I was 17, I thought about these things. I was like, why can't these people just sit at home and just enjoy their evening? Like, why the hell do you have to go out? Why the hell do you have to, go and force yourself to play bowling? Like, there's nothing fun about bowling. Yeah, there's a heavy ball, you take it, you toss it, you hit some things, and then you celebrate by drinking some beer. Like, what the hell is the point of that? Like, is that really meaningful? Like, is that how you're supposed to spend time? Is that like... at the time I didn't find meaning in it, but maybe some people do. Maybe some people like going and playing these meaningless games just to socialize with other people, but I didn't find much meaning in it. It was just this couple and me and maybe some of their friends, and that's it. It was the same circle of friends anyway. They weren't like meeting new people. It was just the same circle of 4 and 5 friends, and they were just hanging out with each other and playing these stupid games, wasting their time. It's almost like escaping themselves, avoiding themselves. Like there is a looming inevitability, like the black hole is approaching, and they're running away from it. And what is this black hole? This black hole is them spending time with themselves, them being alone by themselves. And that's what they were most scared of. They didn't want to be alone. Like, them being alone by themselves was like the most terrifying idea. Right? And that, in my view, is a symptom of them being afraid of being alone. And that's why whenever I see people being very busy or forcing themselves to be busy, sometimes I feel like they're more alone while they're being busy compared to if they were just sitting at home alone. Like, they're more lonely with other people than they would have been by themselves. Right? Because they're forcing themselves to do these things just to go out, do things. But in reality, there is no meaning in them. And you cannot enjoy something unless there's a meaning in it. And I feel like the US culture currently has developed as a result of people escaping themselves, avoiding themselves. Right? You see people going to the bars, drinking some poison. Like, well, what is the point of that? It's like just to go out and not be by yourself. It's almost like that's the whole point. And that's actually what the Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung, who was sort of like one of the most influential psychologists in history, he said the general neurosis of our time is that people live generally meaningless lives. Right? He said if you just look at how neurotic we have become, a lot of it has to do with the fact that we live generally meaningless lives. It doesn't have anything to do with the fact that you have ADHD or you were born the wrong way or this or that happened. No. A lot of the neurotic tendencies that we have their origins in the fact that we just live meaningless lives. Yeah, they tell us you should get rich. Yeah, if you're rich, that brings comfort, but then what? Like, I see so many people are like, oh, I want to marry rich, I want to marry a rich guy. I want to be rich, and then what? Yeah, you bought your BMW M8. Yeah, you have a nice house. Then what? Right? They're just gonna sit at home, play video games all day. So I don't know. I think if people maybe, I mean, I don't even know what the solution is. I mean, all I can do is just observe, right? That as a society, as a country, everyone here is anxious, stressed, and to a certain extent depressed also. I mean, this is evident from the fact that this country uses so many drugs. People who live generally meaningful lives will not use drugs. Drugs are used by people to escape the reality that they're living in. And so they talk about war on drugs, strengthening the border. That won't do anything. The real cause of the drug abuse in this country is that people live meaningless lives. And so they have to use drugs to add some excitement to their life. Otherwise, they might just die from boredom. But the interesting thing is that since people are so lonely, why wouldn't they go and socialize more? We use dating apps to sort of help each other find partners, but dating apps don't work either. Because when you match with someone on a dating app, then you have to be interesting over text, and that's a whole different thing than being interesting in real life. Just because somebody's interesting over text doesn't mean they're going to be interesting in real life, and vice versa. So dating apps don't work. If you approach people in real life, there's a lot of anxiety and fear and stress. And so all in all, that kind of leads to a very lonely society, which is what the United States culture has kind of become. In my view, the US culture is now a symbol for loneliness, kind of. A Japanese writer I was reading the other day, he said, why is it that Americans are so lonely? He asks, he's like, why is it that Americans are so lonely? And he says, perhaps it is because they're all descendants of immigrants. Maybe that's why they're so lonely. Which kind of made me think, maybe he has a point. But then I don't know where this is gonna go, what is the end game for this? Because the way this is going, I think this is gonna take a huge psychological toll on people. Like certain Eastern traditions and cultures there, society is organized such that people talk to each other a lot, neighbors talk to each other a lot, people stay connected. In the US they don't. And when was the last time you saw a neighbor talking to each other? Life here is very individualistic. You're supposed to just go work and work and work and work, and you come home, you're tired, you cook, you watch TV, right? You consume content, you consume ads, and you go to sleep, then you wake up, you go to work. It's like capitalism on steroids. That's what this is here. There's absolutely no socialism, there is nothing. Absolutely nothing. And are humans meant to live like this? And for how long can they live like this? So And it's almost like people are afraid to admit that they're lonely. It's like they're scared of it. They're like, oh no, I have friends, I have things to do. But in my view, why not just admit? I mean, if you're lonely, then you're lonely. You know, if you don't have anyone, then you don't have anyone. Like, why is that something that you should be scared of? The other day I went to a coffee shop here. It was snowing. It was very cold. And I found myself inside this coffee shop, and there were people there studying and drinking coffee, and I took one of the tables by myself and I sat there sipping my coffee and reading some selected letters of Nietzsche or some works of Carl Jung or something like this. I forget. And as I looked outside, it was snowing, and somehow the voices of the people around me calmed down slowly, and slowly their voices just kept decreasing, and I focused on the snow on the outside. And I thought about certain things, and I reflected on certain things. And I was there, I must have been for a few hours, because I started reading some things, and so at some point I look around and there's nobody left around me. Like I didn't even notice that it was just me and the barista, the little girl who was sort of cleaning up some cups or doing something in the kitchen. So it was just me and her left. The lights in the coffee shop were dim, it was kind of grey outside, it was still snowing, and it was very quiet. Right, and so, and then I started walking outside slowly. Every now and then a car would pass, and there were like tall lampstands on the roads, and I would look at them and they were dizzy, so like the lights would stretch in my eyes. Every now and then a car would come, and then its noise would slowly disappear away. And so I just kept walking towards my apartment, leaving traces of a strange foreigner in this town. Right, so that kind of describes to you what a typical day sometimes for me is. It's just I don't talk to anyone. I just go to a coffee shop, or I hang out by myself in a library. I drink some coffee. I talk with some people from the past. For example, I read some books of Nietzsche, for example. Right? It's like communicating with someone from the past. And then I leave. And in my view, that kind of is a problem. Because like, yeah, you want to sort of make friends and talk to people and stuff like this, but also like, how do you even go about it, right? Like, how do you go and make friends? It's kind of, it's not easy, but also like the things that your friends do you find them enjoyable? The things that I find interesting, the things that I find enjoyable, I find that not many people find enjoyable. Somebody who likes philosophy or psychology or psychoanalysis or things like this. Most people you meet, they just want to go drink, go sip, and things like this. So, who knows? Who knows where this is going to lead, but we'll see. If you're lonely for too long, if you spend too much time by yourself for too long, to quote Nietzsche, you start chewing on your own fat. And that's bad, because at some point you'll run out of fat and you'll start chewing your own muscles, and eventually you start eating yourself alive. Right, so that's something you have to be careful with. Being in solitude for too long, being alone for too long is not good. A lot of the psychological problems have their origin in solitude. Solitude is good because you will reflect a lot and you will learn a lot about yourself, but you have to be careful because the moment you start eating yourself alive, that's when you know that you're on a downward hill, and the longer you stay on that road, the harder it will be to climb back up.